Hello, welcome to Kiwi Cop Stories. I'm Simon Wyatt. Now recently I've decided to start mixing up the content of this channel and incorporate some crime prevention themed advice based on my experiences as an ex-police officer. The idea being that this information is helpful, educational and provides some guidance on matters of the law which you may be unfamiliar with. The first topic I'm going to talk to you about is that of trespass. No doubt you've heard the term used before, maybe you've seen it on TV or at the movies, maybe even seen some signs out and about with trespass on it. But what actually is the offence of trespass when it comes to New Zealand law? Well, by the end of the video you'll have a good understanding of what actually it is, and you'd also know what to do should you or someone you care about have to trespass someone from a property. And I want to share this advice with you because trespass is a reasonably common occurrence which police officers deal with on a day-to-day basis throughout the country. It is highly likely that you or someone you care about will have to tend to this matter in either a professional capacity or a personal capacity in their lifetime. And there may be a number of reasons why you would want someone trespassed. They could be committing criminal offences on your property, like assault, causing property damage, maybe shoplifting, or perhaps they're just on your property and you want them to leave for no other reason than that. So Trespass New Zealand comes under the Trespass Act 1980. There it outlines two different kinds of trespass: trespass after warning to leave under Section 3 and trespass after warning to stay off under Section 4. Let's take a quick look at the legislation to gain a better understanding. Section 3. Trespass after warning to leave. Every person commits an offence against this Act who trespasses on any place and, after being warned to leave that place by an occupier of that place, neglects or refuses to do so. So that's fairly easy to understand, but there are three key points here. 1. The person trespassing has been told to leave a place they are trespassing and they've actually been given a reasonable opportunity to do so. 2. After being told to leave, they must either then refuse or neglect to do so. And 3, the person warning them to leave must be an occupier of that place. Now, an occupier under the Act constitutes not just an owner of a property, but also tenants and licensees. This includes business owners or store personnel acting on behalf of the business owner, and police and security personnel may also act on behalf of occupiers in trespassing persons from such places as shopping malls or council-owned properties. I guess a typical example of this kind of trespass is picture a small family gathering on a Friday night at a residential address. Then some unwanted people are walking by and want to join in on the party. They're told to leave by the owner of the property, but they refuse to do so. At this point they are committing the offence of trespass under Section 3 of the Act. Now there is actually a defence under subsection 2. It shall be a defence to a charge under subsection 1 if the defendant proves that it was necessary for him to remain in or on the place concerned for his own protection or the protection of some other person, or because of some emergency involving his property or the property of some other person. So taking the example we used earlier, had the group of strangers run onto the property where this small gathering was taking place because they were being chased by a group of males who were threatening them, and they feared for their safety, hence they wanted to take refuge at the property until the threat had gone, that would be a defence under subsection 2 for that trespass. That's the first type of trespass. Now let's take a look at Section 4. Section 4. Trespass after warning to stay off. Subsection 1. Where any person is trespassing or has trespassed on any place, an occupier of that place may, at the time of the trespass or within a reasonable time thereafter, warn him to stay off that place. Subsection 2. Where any occupier of any place has reasonable cause to suspect that any person is likely to trespass on that place, he may warn that person to stay off that place. Subsection 3. Where any person is convicted of an offence against this Act committed on or in respect of any place, the court may warn that person to stay off that place. Subsection 4. Subject to subsection 5, which is the defence section. Every person commits an offence against this Act who, being a person who has been warned under this section to stay off any place, willfully trespasses on that place within 2 years after the giving of the warning. This section is different to Section 3 in a couple of ways. Firstly, the person being trespassed doesn't have to be at the place to initiate the trespass process. They could have just left, or you may believe it is reasonably likely they'll come back to the place. 2. The offence is committed if a person returns to that place within 2 years of being warned to stay off that place by an occupier. So same deal applies to this section as Section 3. An occupier must be the person trespassing the person from that place. An example of Section 4 trespass would be, taking that previous example of a small gathering, let's say that the group of people that came onto the property were arrested under Section 3 of the Trespass Act. Police arrived, but before the police arriving, several threats were made to the occupants about returning to the address. So as a precautionary, the occupants served trespass notices under Section 4 on all the people that were trespassing. So if they return within that period of 2 years, they would be liable for trespass under Section 4. Another example of trespass under Section 4 would be your typical shoplifter who's shoplifted some items and you're wanting to trespass them under Section 4 for a period of 2 years to prevent them coming back and stealing more items. Defences for a Section 4 trespass are covered under subsection 5. It shall be a defence to a charge under subsection 4 if the defendant proves that A, the person by whom or on whose behalf the warning concern was given is no longer an occupier of the place concerned, or B, that it was necessary for the defendant to commit the trespass for his own protection or for the protection of some other person, or because of some emergency involving his property or the property of some other person. So the only additional defence we have under Section 4 trespass is under A, and an example of this, sticking with that same example, would be, say the occupant in the family who had the group trespassed moved house within that 2-year period the people were trespassed for. Let's say the people that were trespassed returned to the house, they would not be liable for the trespass with respect to the previous occupant. A trespass warning under Section 3 or Section 4 can be done in 2 ways, either verbally in person or in writing. The maximum penalty for trespass under Section 3 and 4 is either a fine of up to $1,000 or imprisonment up to a period of 3 months. There are other sections of the Trespass Act which deal with disturbance of domestic animals by a trespasser, the laying of poison or setting of traps on private land, and also gates. We're not going to cover those today, but if you want to check them out, check out Sections 6, 7 and 8 of the Trespass Act. Just going to cover off a few things that are often misconstrued when it comes to trespass. The first is that a common defence against a charge under the Act is that the occupier consented to the person going onto the property. It is important to remember, particularly when it comes to residential properties, that everybody has an implied licence to walk up the path and knock on the door. You must then ask the person to leave and give him or her a reasonable time to leave before the person becomes a trespasser. Next, if you know the person you have trespassed under Section 4 and you invite them back onto the property prior to that 2-year period, you're effectively making a trespass notice null and void. You'll have to re-trespass them again should you change your mind again. So it's probably a good idea to rethink what they're doing in your life if you find yourself in this situation. And lastly, can a landlord be trespassed from a property by a tenant? Well, the answer is actually yes. Under the Trespass Act 1980, a person in lawful occupation of land or a place is an occupier. A tenant, by virtue of lawful possession of rented property via a tenancy agreement, is therefore an occupier of the property, so has the right to issue a trespass notice should the need arise against a landlord. However, under Section 48 of the Residential Tenancy Act 1986, you have limited rights as landlord to enter the premises, to carry out maintenance and repairs, or conduct inspections as long as you give proper notice to your tenant. You have these rights even if a trespass notice has been issued. I'm now going to cover off the best way to go about trespassing someone from a property. Under Section 4, serving a trespass notice in writing is by far the preferred method. Even though there's no requirement, and it can be done verbally, when it's in writing, it reinforces the situation to the person being trespassed. There's also a clear record of it, and it makes it easy to explain to police officers should they need to intervene. Trespass notices are found online at the police website www.police.gov.nz. If you're a business owner and have been having issues with people, I would suggest you go onto the website, print off a few copies and have them handy with you at your business should you need them. A written trespass notice is a very simple form to fill out. All that it has on there is the name of the person being trespassed, the address where they're being trespassed from, and the occupier's name, signature and date. There are 3 copies for the written trespass notice. One goes to the person you're serving it on, 1 copy that you keep for your record, and 1 copy that goes to the police station for their record. To serve a written trespass notice in person, all you need to do is give the completed form to the person being trespassed. If they refuse to accept it and it drops on the ground, that notice is still considered served. Keep that copy that they dropped and note down that the person refused to accept the notice. If you're serving a trespass notice by registered post, keep a copy of the receipt and keep it with a copy of the notice. After giving the trespasser the warning, whether verbally or in writing, you're required to give them a reasonable time to leave. If the person stays or takes an unreasonable time to leave, call 111 and ask for police. If a trespassed person returns to the place they've been trespassed from, be sure to let the police know as soon as possible, either by calling the station or calling 111. What the comms operator will require if you dial 111 is your name and phone number, the address that you're at, and the circumstances of what's happened. Just let them know that someone's been trespassed and shouldn't be there. So what happens if you can't get the name and address of the person you're trying to trespass? Well, don't worry, police have powers to compel people under Section 9 of the Trespass Act to give them those details for that purpose. So if you have issues with that, just call the police. If you do decide to trespass someone verbally, it is advisable that you record the date and time along with the reasons for trespassing the person and any other circumstances which may be relevant. Even better, have a witness present. What happens if a person has trespassed on the property but then decides to leave prior to police arriving or prior to even calling the police? Well, you can still report the matter to the police because the person's still trespassed and they are still liable for that. So if you think that the person's going to return again, then it may be wise to go down to the police station to report it to prevent any further nuisance from that person. Reporting the matter to police will usually require a detailed account of the incident to the police, which will involve the taking of a statement, which you will need to sign prior to finalising. Be aware that should a person be charged before the court with trespass, that there's always a possibility down the line that you'll be required to give evidence against that person in court. With that in mind, it's always a good idea to take notes in the time, or shortly after, of everything that happened. These notes are generally given more weight in court than notes or statements made at a later stage time, given the proximity to the incident. Other evidence which may help prove trespass includes CCTV footage at business premises, other witnesses, or even using your cell phone to film the person who is trespassing. But I wouldn't advise the last option if it's going to antagonise the situation. Keep in mind that a Section 4 trespass only lasts 2 years. If the person needs to be trespassed again, then a new verbal warning will have to be given or a new notice filled out. There are potentially other avenues you can take against a trespasser. Legally, you have the right to sue a trespasser for the tort of trespass to land. However, because of the costs involved, this is unlikely to be a sensible option unless the trespasser has caused substantial damage and you seek compensation. It's best to talk to a lawyer to see if this will be of any use to you. And also, depending on your particular situation, you may wish to take action under the Harassment Act or the Domestic Violence Act if you know the person. If in doubt, pop into your local police station and have a chat. We've now come to the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that was useful. Please share the video with anyone else who you think may benefit from it. Till next time, thank you.